What was your reaction in that lunch or afterwards? Or
I listened. I listened and I acknowledged what he said, and I suggested he might read the book, but he didn't.
He didn't.
So met a number of years later when I again applied to become a trainer or teacher. I don't like the word trainer. It sounds like, you know, you're putting an animal through its paces. I went to this board and he was there and he said, well, you can't be a teacher because we don't agree about sexuality. And I said, well, have you read the G-spot? He said, no.
What did you not agree about in sexuality?
I don't know. He never told me. Except to say he didn't believe any woman ejaculated. You know, in 1970, the women began to meet separately from the men at the conference in New Hampshire. Do you know about that?
I read about it.
So the women never said it, never uttered the word clitoris, because if you read Al Lowen's book on love and orgasm, he thinks the clitoris is just a very minor thing, and that women who rely on their clitoris to reach orgasm are immature. That's the Freudian view. So I served as secretary to 10 of those meetings, and in those 10 meetings, the women never said what they really thought. And the reason is there were 2 trainers there and they were afraid they wouldn't get promoted. So my husband and I did a male MAIL questionnaire and gave all the women in bioenergetic analysis who were both practitioners and had been clients a chance to express their feelings anonymously. And they said the clitoris is important. And so I went with that study called From Freud Through Height, all partly right and partly wrong, to a conference of the Society for the Scientific Study of Sexuality. And there I met Beverly Whipple and John Perry, and they were talking about the G-spot and female ejaculation. And I said, I think this all belongs together. Would you give me written permission to write about your published work, which they did. And that's how the book, The G-spot, came to be. Well, I wanted bioenergetic analysis to be given a place in the book. And I said, if you don't do that, I'm going to resign from the book. So they put it in as an appendix. They put the question, abbreviated part of the questionnaire. Have you ever seen the G-spot book?
I haven't, yes.
Well, if you look at the end, you'll see the end has this questionnaire that I'm talking about. I really got mad. I went off and smoked a joint, which I don't do very often. In fact, I don't think I've smoked a joint since then, and that was 1979. No, that was 1981. But I was really furious. So they put that in, and I stayed in the book.
And in that time, were you also involved in the women's movement?
I wasn't. I never thought of myself as a feminist, but I was always interested in women being able to own their own bodies and use their bodies the way they wanted. So I taught the first Lamaze. Well, I attribute this really to my work with Al. So I taught the first Lamaze course in this country. And then I wrote my dissertation on breastfeeding. And I almost got thrown out of Columbia University for doing that. They said the people in my department said, it's not an important subject. And why don't you write about risky shift or cognitive dissonance? And I didn't want to write about those things. I thought breastfeeding, I guess I want to translate what I think is important into action. So Margaret Mead said she would be on my committee. Do you know who she was? A very famous anthropologist, perhaps the most famous woman anthropologist ever. And when she said she would be on my committee, my department had to give me a committee. So that's how I got through. I did it with 1,100 members of the La Leche League. the La Leche League was formed by 5 Catholic women in southern Illinois, well, outside of Chicago, not southern Illinois. They all thought that breastfeeding should be encouraged and allowed and not suppressed, which it was in this country. I'll tell you the degree to which it was. In 1960, my daughter was a year old. I was going to California on the airplane. We were landing. And I was nursing her for her ears. And the stewardess comes up to me and says, "You're corrupting the morals of the servicemen. You have to get up and go into the bathroom while we're landing." That was the attitude that people had towards it. For a European, that must sound strange. Women were being told how they should give birth. You know, they were put in the hospital and knocked out. Women might want to have the chance to participate in their birth. Women might want to breastfeed, because that's a pretty natural thing to do, and it happens to be the healthiest thing for the kid and the mother. And women want to be able to have sex in a way that is satisfying to them. And women vary greatly. And I don't think anybody yet knows why the variation. Why are some women ejaculators and others are not? It may have to do with the location of the clitoris, the location of the G area, which is an analog to the prostate. But the fact is, like men, we have different paths to orgasm. And I think women should have the chance to be the way they are, and to develop new ways if they want to. There's a woman that goes around teaching women how to ejaculate. It may be useful, I don't know. But I think it gives the message that all women should do this, and I don't think that's a correct message, any more than I think it's a correct message. One of the things I said in our study was that many of them who had previously only had orgasm through clitoral stimulation began to have orgasm through vaginal stimulation. So what bioenergetics did was open up another pathway for them. But this is a puritanical country. So that's the attitude that people had towards it. Anyway, my dissertation was published in 4 peer-reviewed journals. And I think it made a contribution towards the resurgence of breastfeeding in this country. I mean, I worked with this huge organization, the La Leche League, so that we would translate what we believed into action. And that's what I'm still about. You asked me about whether I was a feminist, in the sense that I think women should have a chance to own their own bodies. Yes, I am a feminist. In the sense that I think for some women, man is their pathway to the outside world. There are some women who really want just to stay home and be mothers and take care of the house. But other women want to go out and work.
Right.
And women should have that choice, just as men should have that choice, without having these roles just thrust upon them and being told the way they should be. And coming back to Al, he was not as patriarchal as Reich, and he was not as do it to the patient as Reich, but he was still somewhat patriarchal. And maybe, I think he thought I operated too much from intellect, and there was some truth in that. But I don't know why he decided I could never be a teacher.